The Royal Navy currently operates 6 frigates. Not 16, not 60, 6 for a country that spent several centuries treating the world's oceans as a personal project. That number sits somewhere between uncomfortable and a full-blown strategic problem, and the ships being built right now to fix it. The Type 31 frigates, assembled at a shipyard on the Firth of Forth, cost so little per unit that the company building them has spent years bleeding money on the contract. Babcock International called it onerous. Their 2024 financial results included a £90 million loss directly tied to the program, and then in May 2026 they disclosed a further £140 million charge for rework on the first 2 ships alone. The Infrastructure and Projects Authority, the government's own infrastructure watchdog, gave the project a red rating. And yet Indonesia wants these ships. Poland is already building them. Sweden and Denmark are in active discussions. New Zealand has shortlisted the design against the best warship Japan currently produces. Will Arrowhead, the chief executive of Babcock Marine, has set himself a target he calls 31 by 31, which means roughly 31 of these hulls built or on order around the world by 2031. A warship that nearly broke the company responsible for its construction is quietly becoming one of Britain's most sought-after defense exports of the decade. So what is actually going on here, and why does the answer matter far more than the procurement headlines suggest? This is the story of the Type 31 frigate. By every reasonable measure, it shouldn't work. It's about to change the Royal Navy forever. Begin with the problem the Royal Navy is genuinely trying to solve because it is sharper and more pressing than most coverage acknowledges. At its core, the Navy is attempting 2 distinct jobs simultaneously with a surface fleet that doesn't have the numbers to do either comfortably. The first is high-end warfare, hunting submarines in the North Atlantic, escorting the carrier strike group, protecting the nuclear deterrent. That mission belongs to the Type 26 frigate, part of the Global Combat Ship Program, 8 of which are under construction on the Clyde by BAE Systems. The Type 26 is a serious, sophisticated, expensive warship, purpose-built for contested underwater environments. What it is not designed to do is be everywhere. The second job is everything else. Counter-narcotics patrols in the Caribbean, disaster relief in the Pacific, presence operations in the Gulf, maritime security in the Red Sea, showing up consistently in places where the act of showing up is the entire strategic point. This work carries no glamour and no flexibility. A Navy that can surge to high-intensity conflict but can't maintain persistent global presence isn't a global Navy. It's an expensive emergency response unit that happens to have aircraft carriers and a pair of Type 45 destroyers handling air defense at the top of the formation. For years, the Royal Navy tried to perform both roles with the same hull, the Type 23 frigate. The Type 23 is a capable platform, designed in the 1980s as an anti-submarine warfare vessel, which made deploying it on Caribbean counter-narcotics work roughly equivalent to sending a Formula One car to collect the children from school. It functions, technically. It is also an absurd use of a precision instrument, and it wore the ships out in the process. By 2019, the fleet was aging visibly. Retirements were accumulating, and the Navy needed a second category of ship. Cheaper to build, cheaper to operate, flexible enough to absorb the full range of secondary tasking, and available in sufficient numbers to provide persistent presence without gutting the high-end force. That requirement became the Type 31, and it sits at the center of the UK's national shipbuilding strategy as the template for how British yards are supposed to compete internationally on price as well as capability. The procurement logic was almost brutal in its simplicity. Fix the price at £250 million per ship, run a competition, build 5 of them. In return for those savings, the Navy would accept a smaller sensor suite and weapons fit than a Type 26 received, alongside considerably more mission flexibility. The Type 31 was explicitly not designed to be a high-end warfighter. It was designed to be everywhere a Type 26 couldn't be. Babcock won the contract in November 2019 with a design called Arrowhead 140, based on the hull of Denmark's Iver Huitfeldt class frigate, originally developed by Odense Maritime Technology, with BMT as co-design partner, adapting it for Royal Navy requirements. The Iver Huitfeldt design itself incorporated a modular approach to weapons and sensor fit, drawing on stand-flex principles developed for smaller Danish vessels. And that philosophy carries through into the Arrowhead 140's configurable architecture. The total contract value came to £1,250 million across 5 ships, which is exactly $250 million per hull, with no margin visible from orbit. A reasonable person might ask how any serious defense contractor agrees to those terms. The honest answer is that the terms were constructed deliberately by the Royal Navy to force efficiency, and Babcock accepted them because the alternative was watching the work go elsewhere. The logic ran like this: if Babcock could industrialize the build process, develop the supply chain properly, and get the workflow right across the program, the cost per unit would fall as construction matured. Ships 3, 4, and 5 would be meaningfully cheaper than ships 1 and 2. The fixed-price contract was a mechanism to make the shipbuilder absorb its own development costs, rather than pass them quietly to the taxpayer, which is a different model from most defense procurement, and explains why the early financial pain has been so concentrated. But first-of-class construction is always where the unknowns live. Design integration problems, out-of-sequence working, components that don't quite fit as originally drawn. These are not exotic failures. They are the standard friction of building something new at industrial scale. The £140 million charge disclosed in May 2026 traces almost entirely to ships 1 and 2, not to a systemic collapse across the program. Babcock itself described the Type 31 contract as the last material legacy onerous contract the group is managing, which is the kind of statement that contains both an admission and a promise. HMS Venturer, the lead ship, rolled out at Rosyth in May 2025, and her hull entered the water for the first time in June 2025. The third ship, HMS Formidable, had her keel laid in December of the same year. The program is absorbing pain. The program is also delivering ships. Now set the procurement story aside for a moment, because what the design itself actually delivers is where this gets interesting. The Arrowhead 140 hull contains 119 square meters of configurable mission space, the equivalent of 6 standard 20-foot shipping containers, and those containers can be exchanged between deployments depending on what the ship needs to accomplish. Intelligence gathering equipment for one assignment, medical facilities for disaster relief on the next, specialist counter-narcotics kit for a Caribbean tasking after that. The hull remains constant while the operational capability inside it can be almost entirely rebuilt, and no frigate in Royal Navy history has offered that level of reconfiguration at this price point. The propulsion system uses electrically actuated assemblies rather than hydraulic ones, which matters less in peacetime and considerably more when something goes wrong at sea. Hydraulic pipelines, when ruptured in a combat environment, create serious problems for crew and machinery alike. Electric systems isolate more cleanly, repair more quickly, and reduce the ship's overall weight and mechanical complexity in ways that compound across a vessel's entire service life. It is the kind of engineering decision that never appears in a press release, but shapes the survivability of every person aboard. On weapons, the Type 31 carries the Sea Scepter surface-to-air missile system, the same MBDA-developed weapon fitted to the Type 23 as it exits service, providing the ship's primary air defense envelope. The main gun is a 57mm BAE Systems Bofors, backed by 40mm secondary armament, and the hull was designed from the outset with space and weight reserved for Mark 41 vertical launch cells, which is how additional strike capability gets added without a structural rebuild. In May 2024, the First Sea Lord confirmed publicly that the Type 31 will receive land attack missile capability, which means a vessel originally positioned as a presence and patrol platform is quietly acquiring a strike mission alongside everything else it was built to do. The combat management suite comes from Thales, the TACTICOS system, the same architecture running on some of NATO's most capable surface combatants. The Type 31 was designed from the outset so that its sensors and weapons fit can be upgraded as threat environments change, without requiring the ship itself to be redesigned around them. This is where the export success starts to resolve into something coherent. Indonesia is constructing 4 variants under the name Balaputra II class, and the first of those hulls entered the water in December 2025. Poland has ordered 3 ships designated the Witcher class. Sweden and Denmark are in active discussions, as reported by the Financial Times in September 2025. New Zealand shortlisted the design in May 2026 against Japan's improved Mogami-class frigate. The 31x31 target from Will Erith at Babcock Marine looks ambitious until you count the contracts already signed and the conversations already underway, at which point it starts to look like a projection rather than an aspiration. But here's the thing, the case against the Type 31 is not a weak one, and it deserves a straight hearing. Every navy in the world needs ships that can do everything and survive in the hardest threat environments. The Iver Huitfeldt hull underpinning the Arrowhead 140 design attracted scrutiny when HDMS Iver Huitfeldt F361 deployed to the Red Sea in 2024 and encountered combat system integration problems. And Denmark subsequently concluded that mid-life upgrades to those vessels were uneconomical. The original hull has known constraints. The Type 31 carries a smaller weapons fit than a Type 26, and was never intended to operate in the highest threat environments without support. The counter-argument is that the Royal Navy is not acquiring the Type 31 instead of the Type 26. It is acquiring it alongside the Type 26, and what it is buying in doing so is numbers and operational flexibility at a price that allows both programs to coexist within a defense budget that has never been able to fund everything. A fleet of 8 Type 26s and 5 Type 31s operating together gives the Royal Navy a surface combatant force with genuine range, genuine depth, and a distributed strike capability that the current fleet cannot match even on paper. The Type 31 doesn't need to be the best ship in the water. It needs to be good enough, reliable enough, and present enough to make the overall force credible. The program currently sustains approximately 2,500 jobs across the United Kingdom, roughly 1,250 directly at Rosyth, and a similar number spread across the supply chain. Those are the engineers and workers absorbing the rework problems on ships 1 and 2 right now. They are also, if the export pipeline develops as Babcock expects, the workforce that will be building Arrowhead 140 variants for foreign navies across the next decade. Admiral Sir Tony Ratican, in his role as First Sea Lord and Chief of Naval Staff, told a Defense Select Committee in June 2025 that the Navy was in a difficult transition with frigate replacements not quite ready. That assessment was accurate for the moment he delivered it. HMS Venturer is expected to commission in late 2026 or early 2027, and the fleet is stretched in the period between now and then. But the difficult transition has a defined endpoint, and the red traffic light rating from the Infrastructure and Projects Authority reflects the documented difficulty of building first-of-class ships inside a fixed price envelope, not the unraveling of the underlying concept. The lead ship carries the name HMS Venturer, chosen after the Second World War submarine of the same name, which in February 1945 became the only submarine in recorded history to locate and destroy another submarine while both vessels were operating submerged. The second ship is HMS Active. The third is HMS Formidable. The fourth is HMS Bulldog, named for the destroyer that captured a German submarine in 1941 and recovered, among its contents, an Enigma machine that subsequently helped compress the duration of the war by an amount that historians still debate, but nobody considers trivial. The fifth ship is HMS Taggart. Each name belongs to a vessel that resolved a serious problem under pressure, often through a method that wasn't legible as the right answer until after it had worked. That could be coincidence. It could also be a reasonably accurate way of thinking about what the Type 31 actually represents. The contract that nearly broke its builder, the fixed price envelope that absorbed £140 million in overruns, the warship with a red rating from the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, these are all real. So is the list of countries queuing to buy the same design. So is the modular mission bay, the electric propulsion architecture, the Sea Scepter air defense system, the TACTICOS combat management suite, the Mk-41 cells, and the land attack capability being added to a ship that was sold to Parliament as a patrol frigate. The Type 31 shouldn't work, and it turns out that shouldn't work is not the same sentence as doesn't. The New Zealand procurement decision, the Swedish and Danish discussions, and the next tranche of potential Arrowhead 140 export orders are all in motion right now. When those decisions land, they'll be covered here.